Mel, I need to ask you quick about Elpresador. Now, I realize it's not 1989. I realize he's been 25 years out of college. I realize this, but we need to ask about Elpresador because, I remember watching him as a young journalist over here in Bristol, and I remember looking at him and saying to myself, this guy could really take over the league, but the subsequent drug problems and the subsequent police charges that he had against him, it kind of ruined his it actually ruined his career. What are the prognosis of him at 45 years old getting into this draft? And look, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It could happen, but I'm not saying it won't happen. But if Elpresador comes into this draft right now, Mel, do you think he's still a top 5 pick?
Well, Chris, I happened to see Elpresador play back in the late 80s, early 90s when he was a very prominent member of the Syracuse Orangemen, and I'm going to tell you something. His skill level has not really diminished as much as people will think, being 45 years old, going up against these younger guys in this little level Class 1 draft. I think Elpresador, at his state of mind right now, in the physical condition he's in, could still be a top 5 draft pick in this up-and-coming COD Esports draft. And if you look at the player back in the late 80s, back in like 91 and 92, compared to the player now, you're looking at basically just a little bit of older version of the player who can still play this game at a high level. And if you looked at his gameplay, especially in Black Ops 1, when he was in that league, and he was still a mid-40-year-old man, he still put big numbers up, and he put numbers that even younger guys in this draft, such as a Pepe Gomez and a Lightning Struck, would like to attain, but they're just not good enough to contain. So if you look at the numbers based on production, I'm going to have to go with Elpresador being still a top 5 pick in this draft, given the amount of age he has.
And Mel Kuiper Jr., I thank you, as always, one of the true great draft analysts here. And, I tend to agree with you about Elpresador. Like I said, I've watched him years ago. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I've watched him years ago, and I really have not seen any diminishing skills, as Belichick called it once with Bernie Kosar from Bourbon, Ohio. I have not seen any diminishing skills with an Elpresador, so if he is drafted early, I think that he goes early, and I think he becomes a pretty dominant player in this esports draft. Next up, we're going to visit